Welcome back. It's Career Happy Hour. Good to see everyone. Get you up a little higher there. Welcome. It's Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. Good to have you. Hello. Let's see. Working this on my iPad once more. Just trying to get some, let's see, some different technology working for me here today. I do have my microphone hooked up to the iPad because I did listen to the audio from the last live stream that I did, and it wasn't so spectacular. So yes, we are continuing this Friday. Career Happy Hour is an opportunity for each one of us to press pause and understand how we've done this last week and what we anticipate accomplishing next week in our careers professionally speaking, even if it is just one small step. Let me know in the chat where you're joining from and if you have any questions, or perhaps if you can hear me okay. That would be great to know. I'm sure I'll listen to the audio afterwards. I didn't really test this out, so we'll see how it runs. And we're just about the end to our book, Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty by Harvey Mackay. If you're interested in that, stick around. If you want to listen to the replays, we have these archived on YouTube for that specific purpose. So if you don't know me, my name is Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. That's through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. If that's something you are indeed interested in, go ahead and leave that. Click the link in the description below, regardless of what platform you're on, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook in our group. So we'll continue today completing our book. I think we've only got a few pages left here. Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And I'll do my best to add color commentary during the live stream so that you can hear, at least from another person's perspective, how we would apply this to our professional lives or even to job search. So we're on step 9, all's well that ends well. So let's see here, chapter 71, if you can believe it. The 10 Commandments of Networking. Number 1, I will not assume that the person with the credentials is the person with the power. So true. Number 2, I will not confuse visibility with credibility, mine or anyone else's. 3, I will avoid being a schnorrer or a gniff or a nudge for that matter. So just don't be a jerk. Number 4, I will never say no for the other guy or other person. Number 5, I will dance with the one that brung me, bad grammar and all. Number 6, I will differentiate between my network and my company's network. Number 7, I won't stall, I'll answer the call. Number 8, if I don't know or I'm not sure, I'll ask my customers and my contacts. As a small business owner, let's see. Number 9, as a small business owner, I'll make the personal touch my mantra. The personal touch, my mantra. 10, I'll catch the zeitgeist, and when it changes, I'll catch it again. So that's the 10 Commandments of Networking. Chapter 72, your networking report card. And this appears to be a survey. So if you check this book out from the library, or indeed you actually buy it, chapter 72 is a list of questions. And so I put, I'm not going to put all these questions on the live stream. You can certainly get the book and do this on your own, but there are some good things here to do after action review. Maybe figure out if your report card or your network is actually working for you. Let's see, it says the biggest mistake you can ever make is to get sloppy by thinking you're doing everything right. The only way to know how you're doing is to keep score. How good are your networking skills? Rate yourself. Watch the game films. Learn from your experiences. Here's a very simple test you can give yourself to find out. Answer these questions on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being not true and 5 being very true. And then it'll add them up at the end. I'm going to skip over this. You can certainly get the book and read through. There's a lot of good questions here on how to discern these and whether or not your network is good. I think the key takeaway is you should keep track of if you're getting closer to or farther away from your objective with the networking. And if you're not getting closer to your objective, then make some adjustments. If you are, then refine what's working and make it better. Mackey's maxim: you'll never know you're winning if you don't keep score. Chapter 73, the perfect network. Let me adjust the audio here. We'll turn that up just a little bit. Maybe that'll be better for y'all. I put it on the maximum, 200%. Maybe that's blowing some of you out, maybe not. Maybe it's giving a lot of feedback, but either way, let me know in the chat. Chapter 73, the perfect network. This network was founded in Akron, Ohio, on June 10, 1935, by a stockbroker and a doctor. All members are equal. They come from every walk of life. To help ensure that no other member feels superior or inferior to any other member, they are known to each other only by their first names and their last initials. Names, titles, standing in the community, wealth, or lack of it, do not matter. Only the common bond among them matters. There is no hierarchy, no chapter presidents. Leadership is an organizational task that rotates among members. Each member is pledged to help any other member who needs help whenever that help is needed. We're talking a whole lot of 2 a.m. calls here. Membership is voluntary. You have to want to join to become a part of this network. Often people join, then quit, then join again. Sometimes people are so ambivalent about becoming part of this network that they will attend scores of meetings before deciding to join. No matter, they're still welcome. However, this is an affinity group. There is no one requirement to become a member. Let's see, here we go. Okay, next page. You have to admit you're an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is probably the most effective network ever devised. It's a lifelong network that takes people who are nearly 6 feet under and pulls them up again. Quote, I wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for AA, says Don B. Quote, I know guys who have been hauled in front of a judge for drunkenness 60 times, who are sober and have been sober for years because of AA, unquote. Don B has been a member of 39 years and still attends weekly meetings. You tell me networks are kid stuff? Networks can produce miracles. I can show you a wonderful roomful of them any day. Alcoholics Anonymous is the perfect selfless network. It doesn't offer money or advancement or fame. In fact, it promises anonymity. What it provides instead is reciprocal support in the face of the daily crisis of temptation. This is not a network that people want to join. It is one many have to join. Because it is selfless, AA is a great case study for harnessing the power of networks. Shared failure and shared success function largely the same way. They strengthen those who need it the most. Mackey's maxim: when God closes a door, somewhere God always opens a window. Chapter 74, teach your kids the power of networking. The single best reward of networking is being able to share your skills and your network with others, especially your children. We all do things for our kids, or try to. One of my offspring was looking for a part-time job while she was attending the University of Michigan. Go Blue. She attended the job she wanted to land, hostessing at a popular campus restaurant, but a million kids had applied. She wanted me to help her hold the landing net. I tried, believe me, but I didn't know anyone in Ann Arbor, and I just couldn't connect. Sorry, Jojo. That's okay, Dad. I've got an idea. I'm going to give it a shot. I'll let you know how it goes. When she went in for her interview, she showed the manager a flyer she'd written. The headline said, Jojo says, have I got a seat for you? That's funny. If you give me the job, I'll send out this flyer to every one of my friends. Here's the list. She held up her Rolodex and fanned the cards. There were 200 names on it. She got the job, and the restaurant got a lot of new business they would not have gotten otherwise. Mackey's maxim: if more people knew how to network, wouldn't we all have bigger, better networks? Think about it. Chapter 75. Have your kids teach you the power of networking. So this is your kids' turn. After JoJo read the last item, she said, "Don't you think the headline is a tad presumptuous, Dad? I mean, the point of the story is I did it myself." That makes you think you can't teach you stuff. Are you computerized? No, my answer in 1988 when JoJo was trying to land that hostessing job. I yield. Get your kids to help you. Maybe it's computerizing your Rolodex. Maybe it's teaching you the popular music didn't end when you stopped listening to it. Or maybe it's maybe it's helping you tap into their network. People are often amazed when I tell the story about JoJo and the waitressing job. She had her own Rolodex and it had 200 names? How did that happen? Because I knew my kids would eventually have to build networks, I just didn't see why they had to wait until they were adults. Every time something interesting happened with a member of my network, I was sure to mention it at the dinner table, and it wasn't long before my three kids began to see the power of networking. When my kids became teenagers, I gave them each their own Rolodex. It was one of the best things I've ever done. Nowadays, it's a phone. So one of the things you could have or encourage your kids to do is perhaps join LinkedIn or start tracking on their phone in some app or tool other than a corporate tool that could be taken away at some point. I'm always an advocate of keeping it in a spreadsheet or some other tool like Google, Gmail, Google Contacts, or somewhere. Keep that contact or that information going. In fact, I did a tutorial on how to use Google Docs or Google Drive as a CRM for networking. So look that up. You should be able to find it on YouTube on my channel. When they got their own Rolodex, I helped them capture all the information they needed about their friends and the people they met, and showed them how to stay in touch. Soon it became a habit, and the more success they had with networking, the more deeply ingrained the habit became. So I wasn't any surprise that JoJo tapped her college network to get the job, and it wasn't any surprise she got it. Mackey's maxim: teaching your kids how to network is one of the best investments you'll ever make. Chapter 76, Kid Power. Kids are like super glue. Don't underestimate their bonding power. Maxine and Nancy worked in the same office and couldn't stand each other. She's bossy, said Maxine to her husband. She's careless, said Nancy to her husband. That year they sent their sons to the same summer day camp. Maxine's son, Trevor, was 7, a year older than Nancy's son, Grant. Trevor doted on Grant. Trevor thought of him as the little brother he wished he had. Grant idolized Trevor. Grant thought of him as the big brother he wished he had. Trevor doted on Grant, and Grant doted on Trevor. So Trevor knew how to swim. Despite several years of expensive swimming lessons, Grant didn't. Watch me, Grant, said Trevor. I'm ducking my head in the water. If you can do this, you can learn to swim. I hate that, said Grant. I did too, said Trevor, but it's okay. Once you get it, you get used to it. I don't know if I can, said Grant. Hold your breath, said Trevor. I'll try, said Grant. You're my best friend, said Trevor. You're my best friend too, Trevor, said Grant. Grant held his breath and ducked his face all the way down into the water. Soon enough, he learned to swim. For the rest of camp season, Trevor and Grant went everywhere together. One day, Trevor didn't feel well and didn't go out all day. Grant wouldn't go out either. That fall, Maxine came home from work one day and said to her husband, Trevor and Grant are so cute together. Isn't it sweet how they've become such good buds? You know, Grant's mother isn't so bad after all. She seems to be lightening up a little bit. About that same time, Nancy told her husband, Trevor's going to sleep over Saturday night, and by the way, I think Trevor's mother is starting to do a better job with the paperwork. It's the oldest, corniest piece of advice in the world, but it still works. The strongest networks are built on friendship. Be a friend not only to the people in your network, but to the people who matter the most to the people in their network. Note them and remember the names of your network's kids and spouses, not in a creepy way, of course. Ask about them. Look for any recognition they receive and be certain to congratulate them on their achievements. A note to a business associate's newly graduated daughter or an hour of mentoring a friend's son regarding his career choices is worth a lifetime of friendship to their parents. Whose picture do you carry in your wallet? Your kids or your media contact? Mackey's maxim, and a little child shall lead them. And a little child shall, interesting. Chapter 77. It isn't only people who network. Israel is a tiny country about the size of New Jersey. Yet every tiny twist and turn in Israeli politics is reported in this country as if it were taking place at the local town meeting. By and large, both our media coverage and our public feelings toward Israel are favorable. South Africa gets nearly the same kind of attention. That's another small country halfway around the world, visited by only a handful of Americans every year, whose doings get reported meticulously in our national media. Since the dismantling of apartheid, our public attitudes toward this country have been generally favorable. On the other hand, the media buzzword for news from South America, our hemispheric neighbor, is MEGO. MEGO is short for My Eyes Glaze Over. My Eyes Glaze Over. It takes a revolution to snag a line about the doings in Uruguay or Ecuador or the American media. Arab countries don't fare much better. Public attitudes tend to be skeptical and condescending. Israel and South Africa are very open toward the media. The other countries I've mentioned are not. Israel and South Africa, unlike others, also have very attractive public relations programs. They monitor U.S. politics very closely. When an opinion leader begins to emerge here, even at the lowest level of local politics or the media, you can be sure his or her ascent is noted in Jerusalem and Johannesburg. The careers of mayors, council members, influential business people, talk show hosts, columnists, editorial writers, all are duly recorded and usually early in their careers. These new leaders find themselves invited to an international conference or a seminar, all expenses paid, by the Israeli or South African government. That's quite a heady trip, particularly for people who may have never been out of the United States. They stay at first-rate hotels, meet high government officials, and see the best the country has to offer. Paying attention to emerging opinion leaders before they become emerged, cynical and jaded leaders, these two semi-third world countries have managed to put in place a hugely important network in this country that will support their politics and influence public opinions on their behalf. On the surface, it would seem that Israel and South Africa have very little in common. But there is a significant similarity. For many years, they were both pariah states. The notorious United Nations Resolution 3379 condemned Zionism, the Israeli policy of encouraging the resettlement of Jews throughout the world in Israel, as racism. South Africa was even more a political outcast, not even welcome to participate in the Olympic Games because of its discriminatory racial policies. These two countries were dependent on their own ingenuity to make friends that were denied them because of their untouchable status in the international community. Both of these nations became networking experts by necessity. One by one, person by person, they forged links abroad. Among nations, networking is a big-time operation. They're playing for keeps. Mackey's maxim. You can do what Uruguay and Ecuador still haven't figured out. Okay, interesting. So build your own networks. Okay, so now it's a Q&A section. Excellent. Chapter 78, questions and answers. Why do you network, Harvey? Answer. Other people know other things and other people that I don't know. Question. What's a good icebreaker? Answer. There is no all-purpose line for every occasion. I know better than to try to memorize something. It sounds phony and stilted. Usually I just try to ask an interesting or fun question about the other person. Takes a lot of pressure off you by asking questions. Question: every comic has one killer line to silence a heckler. Don't you have at least one killer networking line? Answer: okay, there's one. When I'm with Carol Ann and we get into a dinner conversation with a new couple at the table, I always ask, how did the two of you meet? 9 times out of 10, you can sit back and listen for 10 minutes. Question: what is your most recent story from that kind of an encounter? Answer: asked the question at a dinner in Atlanta when we were at the 1996 Olympic Games. The answer came back that I was sitting at the last row of a 747 flying from New York to Florida, and Ken insisted I was in his seat. A friendly argument ensued. We laughed and joked about it, and 6 months later, we were married. Interesting. Question: is networking like playing the piano and so requires concentration and discipline? Or is it like being a good party guest in that focus and concentration aren't as good as being everywhere you can be? Answer: what you're really asking me is whether the best networkers are Mr. Inside types or Mr. Outside types, the good organizers or the good people. Billy Graham is a great Mr. Outside. He is known and respected and admired throughout the world. We talked earlier here about 6 degrees of separation, how we can reach anyone anywhere through a chain of 6 people. Well, Billy Graham is so well known and well liked, he is probably the only person on the planet with a network that connects with anyone he wants to without any intermediary. George Wilson was the quintessential Mr. Inside. Very few people have ever heard of him, but he's the man who, for decades, actually managed the Billy Graham organization. George's management ability, coupled with Billy Graham's vision and leadership, enabled it to grow from just Graham and Wilson to a cast of thousands. George Wilson has proven himself as a skilled organizer through early efforts at arranging evangelistic rallies with thousands of young people. George took care of the endless details, the promotions, the mailings, the space requirements, the sound systems, while Billy was outside motivating millions of people through the power of his preaching. They were able to attract a board of directors from among national corporate leaders, assemble a team of several hundred unusually dedicated and competent employees, and build a headquarters office, all of it geared to reaching a worldwide audience. Their finances are sound. There has never been a breath of scandal attached to the operation, and while other evangelists have fallen by the wayside, the BG organization just keeps getting bigger and bigger in reputation and influence. Billy and George, along with their board and their team of employees, did it together, Mr. Outside and Mr. Inside. Some networks are connected to a higher power. Question: just how often are you out in the social landscape building contacts, finding friends? Do you talk to anybody from the guy to the airplane seat next to you to the mailman? Answer: I do, but that's me. Question: does everyone you meet go into your Rolodex? Answer: no. Question: then what are your criteria? Answer: well, I have several. One is, do I go in theirs? If I do, then you can be sure they go in mine. Beyond that, it's a combination of instinct and need. The instinct part is this person interesting? Was the meeting memorable or enjoyable enough to want to stay in touch? Second, is this a person who knows someone or something that should be part of my network? If they meet any of those criteria, in they go. Question: how much time do you devote to managing or maintaining your network? Answer: 2 questions for the price of 1. Okay, managing. That's full-time, but full-time is in the sense that breathing is full-time. Your antennae are always up. You're always trolling, but not in a conscious way. Sure, there are times and occasions when you know you want to vigorously network among the people you happen to be with. You're in a convention, you're attending a civic function, you're interacting in a social event. There are other times when things just happen. You find yourself in a conversation with a cab driver, a waiter, or a waitress, the person next to you at a ball game or on an airplane. Does it go beyond just a pleasant encounter? It could. Depends on those 3 criteria I just mentioned. Do they want to make you part of their network? Was the experience worth reporting? Do they know something or someone you don't? And you can assume most of those things, but you should really know what those things are. Like, why would you want to meet a vice president at a certain company in a certain way? Or why would you want to know somebody in a certain organization that's maybe outside your domain of expertise? So answer those questions for yourself and decide who goes in and who doesn't and who you want to keep in touch with. So that's the managing. Now the maintaining. If you mean paperwork, I do as little as possible. I'm a Mr. Outside, but as little as possible will take at least an hour a week dictating notes and making entries. If you mean maintaining in terms of keeping contact, that's a constant. I'm sure I do it consciously at least an hour a day. Maybe I do it 24 hours a day. Should everyone? No. But I don't see how you can get away with less than an hour a week and still keep up your contacts. Question. Thanks, Harvey. Answer. Thank you. And you don't mind if I add you to my network too, do you? You ask good questions. Now let me ask you one. You're in the publishing business, right? Question. Yes. How did you know? Answer. Come on, Harriet. You're my editor on this book. You made me answer these questions before you published my manuscript. I hope they help our readers. And thanks for all you've done to make this a better, more readable, more useful book. I love that. Chapter 79. A few leftover network aphorisms I have known and loved, and begged and borrowed and stolen. In my father's day, the traditional adornment of the reporter's cubicle was a girly calendar. Since he covered the doings at the state capitol, a rather more elevated venue than the usual reporter's beat, he eschewed the slovenly look and went for a more sophisticated image. The walls of his office, or what passed for his office, a broom closet in the Capitol building, were covered with sayings. My mother did the same thing, only she taped them to the fridge. Remember the Cracker Jack slogan, a prize in every package? At Mackey's, it was a moral with every morsel. That's nice. A moral with every morsel. I picked up the habit, obviously. There are worse ones. Here's one. If I had to name the single characteristic shared by all the truly successful people I've met in my lifetime, I'd have to say it's the ability to create and nurture a network of contacts. You don't have to know everything as long as you know the people who do. As the world changes, one thing will remain constant: the relationships you develop over your lifetime. In my entire career, I've never heard a successful person say he regretted putting time and energy into keeping his Rolodex file. You can't stop the world from changing, but one thing is always within your control: the strength of your relationships with others. Put your memory where your mouth is. If you want to impress people with how much you care, show them how much you remember. The people you are closest to and need most are the ones you are most likely to take for granted. It's lonely at the top. The bigger they are, the more strokes they need. It is a myth that people do not like to be asked for help. Don't be afraid to ask. People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. What you are in God is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God. Remembering doesn't work. Anyone who counts on his memory has a fool for a filing system. One of the greatest mistakes you can make in your career is being afraid to ask for help. There's no such thing as having a poor memory. You either have a trained or an untrained memory. I'll take that one, a trained or untrained memory. 90% of the people that I share my philosophies with about organizing and using the Rolodex file or software will never put them into practice. They lack the necessary ingredient, discipline. Mackey's maxim: a good aphorism might not solve the problem, but it sure makes you feel better. Okay, good. Chapter 80, some final do's and don'ts. I always like that. I guess you could just skip to chapter 80 if you get the book, but anyway. Chapter 80, some final do's and don'ts. Number 1, do you try to recognize the difference among people in your network? Ask people who like to be in control for their opinions. Ask team players to help you solve problems. 2, don't expect every contact you make to give you an immediate return. It takes a while to find the gems. It may take even longer to polish them. 3. Do try to renew valuable contacts even when you've waited too long. It isn't necessary to do it all at once. Start by making a phone call just to say hello. Then follow up with a face to face meeting. 4. Don't use your network to make a connection where there is no real connection. It's like arranging a blind date between a 36-year-old widow and the teenager who mows your lawn. 5. Do change your approach for each of your networks. This isn't hypocritical. You wouldn't ask your clergyman to join your Friday night poker game, and he wouldn't wear Bermuda shorts to your wedding. 6. Don't stay with one group exclusively. Expand your horizons or you'll stagnate. 7. Do learn to listen. Fran Lebowitz had the sad but true insight that the opposite of talking isn't listening, it's waiting. 8. Don't hide your light under a bushel basket. If you're going to do someone a favor, let him or her know about it. 9. Do learn to distinguish between formal and informal relationships. That old football teammate you may have thrown the block that freed you up for a touchdown, but you will be willing to do him a favor to recommend him for a situation that is inappropriate. 10. Don't presume someone in your network when that someone isn't in your network. There are politicians who can shake your hand with both hands, look you deeply in the eyes, call you by your first name, rattle off the names of your wife and 5 little kitties in order of their birth, and still honestly not remember who you are the next day. An aide gave them all the information 30 seconds before you walked into their office. 11. Do use other people's time constructively. Staying in touch does mean Staying in touch does not mean making a pest of yourself. If you have trouble reaching members of your network by phone, then write a note. Still no response? Time to ask yourself if they're members of your network or not. 12. Don't let your network get stale. Find ways to stay in touch with and keep people informed about your moves. That's what I think is pretty critical. It is, I've seen people, if they've been out of work, they did some networking, they got connected, they got a job, and then they stopped networking. And it's a big mistake. And I think they regretted it later because they ended up in the same position, and it took them equally as long, if not longer, to find the next job opportunity. So always keep your network fresh. 13. Do be prepared to return any favor given to you. Better yet, anticipate the request by doing something unasked. 14. Don't permit anyone to use your name unless you're certain he or she won't abuse it. That's one networking favor you should be extremely wary of granting. That's so true. And sometimes that goes unsaid. You know, if you ask somebody to make an introduction for you and you're not sure how they're going to respond, and they don't respond positively, or it just kind of falls by the wayside, then we're being a little careless in making those introductions. 15. Do hoard the favors you're owed and be careful and selective about calling them in. 16. Don't burn your bridges. You're leaving to go off and conquer the world. That's great, but don't slam the door on your way out. Things happen. You could want to come back, or at least get back in touch. 17. Do keep your door open. Okay, when they left you to go off and conquer the world, they did slam the door on their way out. Not so great, but so what? Even if someone had a problem that caused me to fire her 5 years ago, I have been known to hire her back if she's proved she's gotten the problem licked. Just because someone walks out of your network doesn't mean you can't let her back in. 18. Do get a kitchen cabinet of trusted advisors. Kitchen cabinet, that's interesting. You don't want to work the high wire without a net or a network, unless you're one of the flying Walandas. You need a trusted crew that can help get back on your feet if your giant leap falls short. 19. Don't abandon someone who's out of the loop. Next year, that person may be directing the loop. Up and down cycles are part of life. I've known many real estate developers who have gone broke at least once, Richard Nixon rose from the dead more times than Elvis. 20. Do be a mensch. The best way you can help yourself is to use your network to help others. Like it. Chapter 81. Stanley Marcus's networking story, What Goes Around Comes Around. Introduction. Stanley Marcus has more sheer energy, enthusiasm, and curiosity than anyone I know. Fortunately, he is just reaching his prime. He's only 91. That's remarkable. This remarkable man is known worldwide. His name appears on every Neiman Marcus store, where he served for many years in various executive positions, including chairman of the board, CEO, and president. He is a Renaissance man who has written several books, including Minding the Store and countless articles. He is an active consultant on retailing to major corporations, is a in-demand keynote speaker to business and cultural groups, knocks out a weekly newspaper column, is an expert and active collector of Native American and Spanish colonial art, and works out 3 days a week with a trainer on a stationary bike. If all that doesn't tire you out, I don't know what will. In short, he's 91 years young and still going strong. Stanley Marcus's networking story. In Stanley's words, each of us, I'm sure, has a personal opinion about networking. I happen to believe that the process is one that comes spontaneously out of a genuine desire to be helpful to another individual to solve a problem. I don't believe in doing something to invite reciprocation, for I get a great deal of personal gratification by being useful and helpful. Still, I've come to believe that the good deeds do indeed come back to you. Even though it may take some years, here are a couple of incidents that are illustrative. Shortly after World War II, my wife and I were asked to entertain a group of Asian teenagers who were being brought to this country to acquaint them with American lifestyles. They were all from parts of Asia continent: Thailand, Cambodia, India, Pakistan, Burma, Laos, and Vietnam. It was a fascinating group of kids that were entertained at our home, along with our own teenage children and some of their friends. A young student from India was interested in advice about how to get into an American university with strong programs in international trade. I was able to arrange for interviews for him with several of such schools, and eventually he ended up at Columbia University. I kept up with him over his college career by sending him books and magazines on India and its problems. Time passed on, and I lost track of him. In 1964, I made my first trip to India, trying to organize a cooperative trade promotion venture for Neiman Marcus that would promote Indian products and culture. When I was to New Delhi, I found myself lost in a sea of bureaucracy. Everybody liked the ideal, but no one would commit himself or the government to do anything but think about the proposition. Finally, I was taken in to see the Vice Minister of Trade. After introducing myself to him, he beamed with a warm smile and an outstretched hand and reminded me that he was my young Indian student friend. I hadn't recognized him. He immediately took charge and led me through the labyrinth channels of the Indian government's policy structure. In 4 days, we forged an agreement that enabled the project to get off the ground. That's awesome. If I hadn't met up with him, I might have stayed in India for 4 years without any results. Second example. Prior to World War II, Jock Lawrence, a young executive for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, came to Dallas to promote a new motion picture. He was having difficulty getting a booking at the most important movie house because of some previous disagreement. I offered to introduce him to the chief booker and smooth the way for a reconciliation. He was deeply appreciative. I didn't see Jock again until my first post-war trip to Paris in 1946. I ran into him at the Ritz bar by sheer accident. By then, he was Colonel Jock Lawrence on General Eisenhower's staff. He asked if I had ever met Ike, and I told him no. He said I must meet him and he would arrange it. I demurred, not wanting to waste the general's time, but Jock was adamant and set the whole thing in motion. On my arrival at headquarters, Jock was not there, but another officer ushered me into the general's office and introduced me as Stanley Marcus of Neiman Marcus. Ike obviously had not been briefed. He looked at me, smiled, and quizzically repeated Neiman Marcus several times, as if he were trying to determine whether it signified a law firm or a team of acrobats. When I realized his quandary, I explained that Neiman Marcus was one of the finest specialty stores in the country, and that I was on a mission to reestablish our buying connection in Europe. You'll have to pardon me, he said. I've been away from the US so long, and even when I was there, I never had occasion to visit stores. I always shopped at the base PX. He asked me to explain in more detail about our operation, after which I said, General, I hope you will decide to seek the nomination for the presidency, and if you succeed, I hope you will be elected. He thanked me, but was noncommittal about his intentions. As I left, I said, General, if you do decide to go for the nomination and get it, and if you are elected, I hope that as an ex-Texan, you will buy Mrs. Eisenhower's inaugural gown from us. He laughed and replied, if I do, I will. He was true to his word, and when he was elected president, we furnished the inaugural gown made by one of our leading dressmakers, Nettie Rosenstein. Wow, being nice to people is good networking. Besides, it gratifies the soul. Chapter 82, Call Jack. I wrote a story early in this book about my father, Jack Mackey, and his network. I'm going to end the same way. Here is an excerpt from Rabbi Max Shapiro's eulogy for my father, Call Jack. All of us have a story. Each of our lives would make a book, for our emotions, our drives, our achievements are all unique and singular. Bits and pieces of Jack's story can be found in his writings about the Dillinger Gang, the Ham kidnapping, the great and bloody Minneapolis truck strike, his long 19-year effort to free Leonard Hankins, an innocent man who had been convicted of murder. Jack had the great ability to make friends in every walk of life. I talked to many of them, and when I asked them about Jack, I received the same answer. When we needed something, when there was nobody else we could go to for help, when there were problems, we would call Jack. A victim of the concentration camp is seeking his family, and red tape abounds. Call Jack, said the red tape, vanishes. A man must be admitted to the hospital. Beds are not available for 6 months. Call Jack, and a bed is somehow found. Money is needed to guarantee funds for a refugee from Hitler. Call Jack, and the funds are available. A child needs a special school, but conditions make it impossible to accept her. Call Jack, and acceptance comes through. A man needs a job, and no jobs are available. Call Jack, and the man goes to work. Jack was a man with many concerns, and each concern meant human beings. How many said, call Jack for this, call Jack for that? We will never know. How many he helped? We will never know. And perhaps, just perhaps, God had a task difficult to do, a task that needs resourcefulness and tenacity. That needed careful planning, and God too must have pondered and reluctantly must have said, call Jack. I hope your network can help you find a job, or earn a promotion, or close a sale, or make a buck. But even if it never does, if your network can never do what Jack Mackey's did, if it can help you help someone who needs it, then you have the best network of all. Chapter 83, The Last Word. Finished with the book? Give it to someone in your network, or swap it with them. Just don't tell my publisher. That's great. So that's the end of the book. Thank you for joining me this Career Happy Hour. We will pick up next week, maybe something a little more informal to set up the new year. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the comments, and I'll be sure to keep tabs on the chat and the comments and answer any questions that you might have. I hope you have a happy holidays, and we'll see you next Career Happy Hour. Bye now.